Alright, what is up everybody? My name is The Last Hodler and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be explaining to you the cover letter that landed me a CTO position at a publicly listed company in the UK. So if you're looking to get to the next level in your career and you're interviewing at the moment or you're applying for jobs at the moment, this is going to be the video for you. Now if you watch the video and you like the cover letter that I'm talking about here, you can get it on my buymeacoffee.com page for just $17. But otherwise, I'm going to be explaining exactly why this cover letter is so effective and why you should be creating a cover letter like this for your next job. So without further ado, let's get ahead with the video. Alright, what is up everybody? Here is the cover letter. Now I'm just going to be going through this cover letter. I'm going to start with some of the wording or some of the literary portion of this cover letter, and then I'm going to be talking after that about the graphics on the left and also why they're so important. But the first thing that you need to understand about cover letters is that the actual writing style is super important, and the information that you put on the cover letter is also super important. So I'm going to be starting at the top and I'm going to be working all the way down to the bottom, then I'll be doing the graphics on the left hand side. So the first thing that I'd really like you to have a look at with this cover letter, and this is something that I think is completely essential in cover letters, is that you need to have your name in massive big letters at the top, so that when they see your name and they see who this letter is from, they remember who you are, and then in their mind there's a kind of idea of who you are and what you're like, and you want to be the first person they think of when they think about who they're hiring for this job. So put your name at the very top in massive letters. Now after that, I chose deliberately to put Chief Technical Officer just underneath, and that was to kind of subtly implant the idea into the reader's mind that Oscar Chambers is a Chief Technical Officer. And since they're looking for a Chief Technical Officer, they're going to make that subtle association in their brain subconsciously, and that's going to bolster the opinion that I am the Chief Technical Officer that they're looking for and I'm the right person for the job. So if you want to kind of implant a kind of idea into their mind, you can do that. You put your name at the top and then you put the job role just beneath that, and that's going to kind of help them believe that you are actually the person for the job, which you are, and that's why you're applying for it. So after that, and actually I'll just mention one more thing, which is just as important that I almost forgot as well, is that I put a strip of colour at the very top of this cover letter. It's all very well and good to have a black and white cover letter, but if your black and white cover letter is black and white, it's going to be just like most everybody else's, and it's going to blend in and it's not going to stand out, so they're not going to look at your cover letter and go, oh, this one's a little bit different, I better read this one. If you have a dash of colour at the end and they have a stack of cover letters and they're all white at the very top, yours is going to be poking out the top with a little bit of colour that's going to kind of tickle their brain a little bit, and it's going to make you stand out as somebody who's a little bit of a standout for the rest of them. So I would definitely recommend that you put a dash of colour at the very top of your cover letter, and maybe even on all sides, but I just put one at the very top. So the next thing that's very important about cover letters, and this is something that isn't important to everybody, but it is important to some people, is that you actually get the technical writing style of a letter correct. And as you move up the hierarchy of positions in a software company or any kind of company, it becomes increasingly more important that you show that you have the intelligence or the academia or the maturity to get this kind of writing style correct. So I put the date at the very top of that section of the letter, and then the name of the recruiter, and it's very important that you get their first name correct and not just set to say to whom this may concern, but I'll talk about that later, which company they're from, and then the address to whom the letter is. So that is the correct style for writing a letter. And back in the day, back in the old-fashioned days when they didn't have email or anything like that, everyone was writing their letters like this, and everyone had the date and then the name and then the address. And that was just like the general form of a letter. So if you can get this correct, you're going to show to the reader that you have the intelligence and the maturity and the experience to understand that that is the correct form of writing a letter. And that is the sort of attention to detail where a reader would go, ah, this guy understands, this guy must be pretty smart. So if you can get that correct, that's always a very good thing to do. So then after that, and this is just a crucial thing, and you've probably heard this before if you've spoken to any like recruiters, or if you've been to university and you've done like a job employment course or anything like that, or even just in high school, they've probably told you this, and is that you really, and this is absolutely true by the way, you really need to figure out who you're applying to, because you're applying to a job, but really at the end of the day, even more important than that, you're applying to a person who's going to say, who's going to form an opinion on you and just say whether they think you're equipped for the job. So you need to say, instead of saying to whom this may concern, which you might have copy pasted to a million other different job interviews, you can say, you know, dear Chris or dear Jessica, and they're going to say, okay, this person's gone to the trouble figuring out who I am. And only about 30% of people are going to have done that. about 70% are just blasting resumes out in every direction. And so if you can get the name of the person correct, you're going to leave a good impression, and it's going to be it's going to shine on your application. So sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to figure out who exactly you're applying to. If you don't know, and the recruiter won't tell you, or it doesn't say on the website, and it doesn't say on the job application, I would suggest just calling up the company and saying, hey, my name's Jim, and I'm applying for this job, but I just need to know exactly who I'm applying to. And they'll say, oh yeah, it's this guy over here, that's his name, that's his email. So that's a pretty easy way. You might have to do a little bit of digging around, you might have to call a couple people before they'll tell you, but if you're able to find out who you're applying to, that's always a really awesome thing. It's way better than saying to whom this may concern. If you say to whom this may concern, they're going to probably get the impression that you're sending the same cover letter out to many different people, and that's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth. So now that we've discussed that, I'd like to read through this resume, and I'm going to break down exactly why I said everything I said and why it's important to do it in this kind of form. So, dear whoever it was, their first name, I would like to apply for the position of CTO at the company, so you put the company name in there, as advertised on the website. So it's a good idea to just tell them where exactly you found the job application, and then that's going to be like a positive thing in their mind. They go, oh yeah, I remember that, cool. And so they're going to have enough context that they at least have a little bit of an idea of what's going on. So that's the first thing I would write there. And then I was particularly drawn to this position as the requirements align closely with my experience in the field of, well, it was cryptocurrency for me, but it's going to be whatever your particular area is. And then the reason I said that, and I'll move a bit faster in a moment, I was particularly drawn to this position as the requirements align closely with my experience in the field. So what I basically said was, wow, I found this job and it's perfect for me. Implant in their mind, 2 sentences in, oh, this person has already figured out that this is the perfect job for them. That's great. Maybe they are the perfect person for the job. It aligns closely with their experience. And so they're obviously very experienced, and they were drawn to the position. So that's why I wrote that. Okay, so now I moved on to some of the things that I've done. So the first thing is, I've found the application, it's great for me, and the next thing you need to write is, this is why. So during the creation of multiple cryptocurrencies, such as Brazio and VeggieCoin, there are a couple of cryptocurrencies I created, I owned technical direction throughout their design, implementation, and continuous deployment. I liaise frequently with global third-party vendors and clients for my cryptocurrency advertising platform FreeFaucet.io. While creating these businesses, I built and managed various technical and sales teams in USA, Brazil, and UK, both on-site and remotely. So the thing about a CTO position is they're going to want to know probably 2 major things about you. They're going to want to know that you're incredibly technically skilled and experienced, and they're also going to know that you can lead development, and that you can be the glue that holds the team together, and that you can be the one at the front saying, charge, this is the way we're going. So that's what you want to put in your first paragraph. You want to give them an example of how you've done that as many times as you can. So for me, I've done that twice. And so I said, I created a couple of cryptocurrencies with a group of people, and I created an advertising platform with a group of people. You don't have to yet speak to the details on what exactly that was, but I also said that I worked with teams in the USA, Brazil, and UK. And I did that deliberately because a lot of software development teams are remote now. There's people in this demographic, there's people in that demographic, and it's very difficult to kind of have a social environment, which is very important in programming, where everyone is collaborating with each other, people aren't hiding in the corner, people aren't getting their work missed, things like that. So if you can show that you've worked with many people from many demographics and you've been able to collaborate in a team and even lead the team doing that, then that is going to show very well on your resume. So that's the first paragraph. And so the second paragraph I'm going to speak a bit more about a bit later, but I'll just go through it first and then I'll explain the general premise behind it. So I have included, left, some projects which demonstrate my successful technical leadership, there's that leadership again, in multiple domains. So I've done this before a lot of times. That's basically what I'm saying. I'm saying, here are some stuff that proves to you, to the left here, that I exactly know what I'm doing and I've done it before. So that's why that's the first sentence. And then I'm going to go into detail a bit more about exactly how I have developed that. So then it says, I foster a fast-paced, collaborative work environment, playing to the individual strengths of each team member. This approach invokes an autonomous, high-achieving, inclusive, and supportive business culture. So there's so much to unpack in this one. This is probably the most dense paragraph of the entire thing, because there are a few really important things that come right after each other that you need to do all of them if you're going to impress a software company. So the first one is successful technical leadership in multiple domains. If you can say, well, I've been a CTO before and it went pretty cool, well, that's good enough, that's okay. But if you can say, I've done this multiple times in multiple different domains and they've all been successful and they've all been fantastic, and now this, your domain, is the domain I want to do it next, they're going to think, wow, he's already done it a few times, or she's already done it a few times, that they're probably going to be the person that needs to be employed for this position. So that's the first sentence. I'm going into detail next about exactly what kind of work environment I'm going to provide. Something that software companies really care about is the culture of the work there. A lot of them really focus on autonomy. That's a really important one, because if you can employ people who are autonomous, you don't need 7 HR people chasing them around or 7 managers chasing them around making sure they're doing any work. So autonomy is super important. Places like Google and all the big tech companies like that, everyone's super autonomous. A lot of the time they don't even have to come into the office. They just have these deadlines, and if they don't get the deadlines, they're fired. That's kind of the model of how the autonomy of the workplace goes in a lot of these really high-performing tech companies. So I wanted to add that there. I foster a fast-paced, collaborative work environment, playing to the individual strengths of each team member. So you're showing that you're understanding, or that at least you try to understand each individual team member and why they're so good and what their strengths are, and then delegating the work across that group of people, because a lot of software teams have people that hide in the corner and don't do any work, and tech companies are very cautious of that. They really understand that that's the case, and they also find it very difficult to audit people. Like if you're a middle manager somewhere and you're not a programmer and you have to look after all these junior developers and 3 of them aren't doing anything, but they're all friends and they don't want to throw each other under the bus, it's really difficult to figure out who's doing what if you don't really know how to look through the GitHub and you don't really know how to do anything. That's an important thing to say, that you try and understand who's doing what and who's good at what, and you're really involved with all the different parts of the team. So the second thing that's very important about that is saying that you foster an inclusive and supportive business culture. A lot of big tech companies, or small tech companies too, are very aware of the diversity of their audience, and they don't want anybody on their team, especially at a C-level, who makes racist Twitter comments or does anything politically incorrect or inappropriate that might reflect badly on their product or on their company. So if you say that you have an inclusive and supportive approach to business culture, they are going to know that you understand. They're going to be impressed that you have the maturity to say that, and that you understand that that is actually a requirement in these companies, because if you don't have that, the company is at risk of controversy and things like that. So you have to definitely involve that in the cover letter. So the next thing is, using my strong architecture, design and coding skills, I have created and led development in multiple successful web applications, cryptocurrency protocols and APIs, mobile applications and related technologies, all from scratch. I have created many detailed technical videos explaining the underlying protocols powering cutting-edge technologies, which have educated thousands of people. So it's important that you explain that you actually do have a coding background and that you are actually adept when it comes to creating these technologies yourself. Because the thing with a CTO and the things with a senior developer, or at least somebody who has juniors working under them, is they actually do have to have the expertise there, so that when the juniors come to them with a technical question, whether it be a broad or a specific technical question, they have to at least have a little bit of insight and be able to guide and mentor those developers into the correct direction. That's leadership. So you have to show that you have both the strong programming skills, but also the strong leadership skills to back it up. I just realized that I have a typo in here, so this must be an old version, but in the new version I fixed that typo up, so don't worry too much about that. So I've created and led development in multiple successful web applications. That's again reinforcing that I've done this before and I'm wanting to do it again, so hire me. Cryptocurrency protocols and APIs, mobile applications and related technologies, all from scratch. So when you say all from scratch at the end, you're making them realize that not only have you worked in all these different domains, but you understand them from the bottom up, which is another thing that is really important. A lot of these companies, they have legacy code bases, right? And a lot of the time, the legacy code bases aren't that well structured, they're not very clean, they've had layers and layers and layers piled up upon each other. So it's really important that you are able to show that you're able to understand code and that you're going to be able to jump into a project, and even though it's just a complete mess of spaghetti code, you're going to be able to unpick it and understand it effectively. And that comes into the next sentence. in this cover letter. So it says, I'm an ongoing contributor / volunteer to a number of open source projects and have extensive experience dealing with code created by globally collaborative teams. And so if you had any open source contributions at all, you should definitely include this, because probably one of the most challenging things about programming is reading other people's code and trying to figure out what it does, especially when there's a lot of it and you don't really know where to start. And that's where a lot of programmers kind of give up and fail when it comes to programming, and when it comes to joining a new team or joining a new business. They don't know how to engage with the code base. And big software companies are very conscious of this. A lot of the time, if you're a big software company, especially like a legacy software company with a lot of old code that's still in production, you'll hire 20 programmers and only 5 of them have done any code by the end of the first month, because the other 15 just have no idea where to start. Other people are just running around doing their own thing. There's no real support for these new people. And so if you can show that you're the kind of person that can get into a new product, a new project I should say, and then immediately start understanding it and using it, then that's going to be very good for your cover letter. And open source projects are a perfect example of that. When you come to an open source project, you've got this whole bunch of stuff that's probably already been made over a year or 2 years or 10 years, and it's your responsibility to come in there and formulate your own understanding of it without really very much help, apart from just like Googling stuff. So if you're able to show that you're contributing to a lot of open source stuff, that's going to speak to that very well. Volunteer to a number of open source projects and have extensive experience dealing with code created by globally collaborative teams. And that's also another one of those global things where it's like you're saying, not only have I contributed to open source software, but I've also worked with teams that are distributed over multiple demographics, and I'm a good communicator with people who work over multiple different demographics. So then the final paragraph on this text is a call to action. And this is very important that you have a call to action there. You want to give them the opportunity to call you or to email you so that you can further the discussion. So the last sentence, always make that a call to action. So here we go. I would be thrilled to discuss this opportunity with you in person, and will be ready to hit the ground running in building and leading the technical team. I would appreciate the opportunity to meet and discuss how my qualifications and experience would be useful in contributing effectively to your organization. So it's like saying, please call me, let's talk about this. I want to talk about this with you. And so the thing with calls to action, and this is exactly why people say subscribe to the video at the start of a YouTube video. A lot of people, when they're operating day to day, you know, they might not have had their lunch yet, they might be a little bit low blood sugar, they might be on autopilot, they might be a bit hungover, anything like that, and they're not really engaged with what you're trying to give them. So if you can give them explicit directions on what they should do next, a lot of the time people will go, yeah, I think that is a good idea and I will do that. If they're a little bit distracted, or there's a little bit of something else going on, or you haven't told them exactly what you want to do, then they won't do it. And the person reading your cover letter might have like 6 cover letters in the pile, and they might just skim through it and then go cool, and then start reading the next one. So it's very important that you say, okay dude, call me and we can continue discussing this. And they might go, cool, yeah, I will call you. So call to action, that's very important there at the bottom. And then the next thing that it says, and this is important, it should say sincerely at the end of a cover letter. It shouldn't say best regards, it shouldn't say kind regards, it shouldn't say thanks, it should say sincerely. And that's another example of correct writing styles with this kind of document. So sincerely is the word you should use there. And probably not everybody, but some people will pick up on that and go, yep, cool, they know how to write a letter, they have this like secret intelligence that we both know about, and that's going to put you in their good books as well. So use sincerely at the end of the letter. So after that, there is a signature, and that is not my signature. I have just terrible handwriting. In fact, I almost failed university because no one could read my handwriting, and I remember during my final exams at university, I was resitting an exam because the lecturer came up to me and said, dude, no one can read your handwriting, what even is this? And I sat down with my mum, who is like a primary school teacher, and she gave me handwriting lessons before my final exam. So that just goes to show exactly how, I got the degree, but it just goes to show how terrible my handwriting is. So I didn't want to use my own signature because it's just complete abomination. But there are on the internet signature generation softwares that you can use for free. They're free, and so you can just type your name in and it'll come up and you can copy paste it in, and it's just another one of those nice like attention to detail kind of things. So definitely include a signature, and there's lots of different fonts that you can choose from, and there's a lot of very nice ones. So I've put my signature there at the bottom for that reason. It's just one of those things where they'll look at the whole thing, and it will look like a very formal, very professional, a very well-made attention to detail kind of document. And then of course underneath that you should put in plain text your name, because that's another one of those styles things that people will notice and go, yep, I recognize that style, that's a real thing. So after that, let's move on to the now left side of the cover letter, and there's a very specific form that I've chosen to this as well as it's kind of like a call to action, but it's like a user experience thing that I think will lead to the reader doing what I want, which is them calling me. So the first thing at the top of the contact page is, not the page, but the contact section, is the phone number. So you don't, the hierarchy of value in sales, and whenever you're trying to get somebody to do something for you, the most effective way to get somebody to do something for you, and in this case it contacts you, is to talk to them in person. If you're trying to sell someone something and you're there in person and you say you want to buy this, it's way more effective than if you're talking to them over the phone, and being over the phone is way more effective than if you ask them through email. So the most important thing is to have your phone number there at the top, so that's the first thing they see and they go, cool, I'm going to call Oscar and offer him the job or offer him the interview. You don't want your email first, because you don't want them to email you, because there's less of a chance of that dialogue progressing. If you have the phone number there, obviously you can't say meet me at the bar at 12 p.m. on the top of your cover letter. So the first thing has to be the phone number. And then once you're on the phone, you can get friendly with them and you can have that like human connection that people have together. And it's almost like you form an acquaintance and you form a friendship. It's just kind of, they have you now in their mind. They know what you sound like, they know what you speak like, all of that kind of thing. So phone number is the first. And then of course the next one is email, and then the next one is the address. Now I wouldn't put your street address, I would just say like what suburb or what state, what county, whatever it would be, whatever the most local demographic is that isn't your street address, put that there, whatever county you're from. So I'm from Melbourne, which is a city in Australia. Now if you're going to apply for a job that is in Singapore and you're from the UK, it probably isn't a good idea to put your address in the cover letter. You should probably let them ask you that. And once you're on the phone with them, or once you're on a Zoom meeting with them and they ask you that, then you can tell them, and by then you've already kind of created this personal connection. But if they read that and you're on the other side of the world, they might think, oh God, this person's so far away, I guess even subliminally, even subconsciously, they might say, maybe this person isn't the right person for the job. But if it's in the city that you're in, or if it's in the town you're in, definitely put that there, because they're going to think to themselves, oh, this person's near us, he's like us, or she's like us. They're probably going to be the person for the job, or maybe it's more likely for them to be the person for the job. So that's just one of those subconscious things that people feel. If they see people from some far away random land, it kind of distances you from each other. In like an employability sense, I guess, even if it is very subtle. So that would be my advice on that. And then the next thing I put onto this cover letter was a GitHub link, because I have a lot of GitHub contributions and I thought that would be impressive to somebody who came to have a look at my open source contributions. And also it's just a little bit of a flex with computer science and software engineering kinds of jobs, that you should either include your Stack Overflow profile or your GitHub. I would suggest your GitHub, because Stack Overflow is like one of those things where you can be really good at answering questions, but you might not have any projects, or you can be really good at asking questions, but you might not have any good answers, things like that. So I would say that GitHub's more prestigious because they can see exactly your open source contributions. And open source is one of those things that's very highly regarded in the employability space. So definitely use GitHub. But if you don't have GitHub, Stack Overflow, LinkedIn, something like that would be okay. So after that, the final thing on this cover letter is the recent projects section. Now I would certainly recommend that you add one of these to your cover letter and put some QR codes on there that they can just scan and say, oh my God, that's the website they said they did, and there it is right in front of my eyes. And then they can have a look through everything. That could be like a link to a YouTube video, it could be a link to a PDF, it could be a link to anything, it could be a link to a store, whatever it is. So the first thing that's on the recent projects section is my cryptocurrency YouTube channel, where I break down the Bitcoin protocol in a series of videos that just explains basically how Bitcoin works under the hood. And it was very relevant to this position, as this was a cryptocurrency company, and so I thought that if they scanned that first and had a look at some of my YouTube videos, which are very easy to digest, by the way. YouTube videos are super easy. They're way better than like a scholarly article or a website. You can just sit back and kind of just relax and watch it. So I thought that would be really good. It's both super relevant to the cryptocurrency thing, and it's very easy to digest. So that would be the first thing at the top. And then if they're able to digest that, they might, but they probably won't, look at the second and the third one. The second one here is a crypto advertising website with over 100,000 users that I created, and that is also to do, it's a little bit further removed from cryptocurrency. However, I did have other people working with me on that, and so that shows a bit of the team collaborative effort there. And also the website has 100,000 users, which is quite a lot. So that was the second most impressive thing I thought that I should put on the cover letter. And then the third thing is a Forbes article about a couple of the cryptocurrencies that I created, and Forbes is quite a good magazine, so I thought that that would be a good thing to add into the cover letter as well, so they can read that and go, oh my goodness, he's been in Forbes. Projects you think are most impressive, you should order them. Probably 3 is a good amount. You could do 2, you could do 4. I don't think you should just do 1. I think if you could do more than 1, that would be fantastic. If you just have 1, just do 1. But it's definitely a good way to get them into your projects. It's like, just scan that and then you're in there. So definitely have something like that. And this is going to put you a cut above the rest. I mean, a lot of people who are sending in cover letters, they don't have any color. It's all in a Microsoft Word document and it's all very slapdash. So you definitely want to make sure that you have something that makes you stand out, like this QR code thing. Another thing that I can't remember if I mentioned or not is this dash of color at the top of the cover letter, and I feel like that is actually very important. So let's say you had like 7 cover letters and you're dreading going through them, you're like, oh my god, and they're all black and white, except yours is someone's, not yours, someone's has a dash of color at the top. That's going to stand out and you're going to go, oh, this one's a bit different, I wonder what's so special about this one. So you want to have any chance you can get for leaving an impression on the reader that other resumes may not leave, and then you can stand out from everybody else and they'll go, hey, this is the cover letter I'm actually going to read thoroughly. Because most employers, most recruitment agents, most people who are looking through resumes, it's really boring. Like, you don't want to read 17 resumes and 17 cover letters, so you're just going to scan through. And that's something with programmers as well. Like, programmers don't read things comprehensively. We just pick out little bits of information because we're very good at digesting a massive amount of information and just picking out a tiny little parts of it and just disregarding the stuff that doesn't matter. So little flares of color, little flares of interest like that are going to really make you stand out more than everybody else. So I'd just like to finish on one thing here, and this is another very important thing, and that is you really need to write a different cover letter for each job position. Please don't just copy and paste the same cover letter for each position, because that's going to really limit your chances of getting a call back. People are really smart. They can tell when you've written something that's bespoke, and if you do write something that's bespoke and different for everybody, unique for each different job application, you're able to inject the key bits of information inside that cover letter that were on the job application. If the job application says you need to be good at Ruby, you can say in your cover letter, I'm good at Ruby because I did this Ruby thing. But if you're just copy pasting cover letters to like 17 different jobs, you're not going to be able to get that specific. It's probably going to be obvious to the reader that this wasn't written just for them. And you might even be making mistakes. You might be applying for Google and Amazon at the same time, and you accidentally said Amazon in both of the cover letters, or you accidentally said Google in both the cover letters, or you called the guy the wrong thing. And humans are very prone to error. I mean, you saw that spelling mistake in there from the old version. So you really need to make sure that you're proofreading this and you're going over them, and you're doing a different cover letter for each person. As well as with this writing style as well. I didn't write this perfectly like this the first time. This was like the 15th or 16th iteration of the text. I read it over and over and over again, and every single time I picked out a word and put in a different word, or a sentence put in a different sentence. So the more polished and the more beautiful you can make your cover letter, the more they're going to go, wow, this is actually kind of exceptional. Maybe we'll get this person in first. And you might be the first person in, and then they might just disregard everybody else because they might have a great interview with you, and it might all just boil down to the fact that you had a signature at the bottom of your cover letter, or a flare of text, a flare of color at the top of your cover letter. So that has been my insight on how you should be creating your cover letter. And I'm going to be doing another video. The next video is going to be about the actual resume that accompanies this cover letter. And if you like this cover letter, as I said before, please check it out on my Buy Me a Coffee page. If you're really serious about getting your next job at a CTO level or a senior developer level, this is going to really work wonders for you. But if you just watch the video so that you could get an idea of how these kinds of things are created, well, there you go. And please make sure you subscribe so that you can see the next video, which is the resume video. It's going to be a really good video, and that resume is also going to be available on my website after it comes out. So thank you very much again for watching, and I really hope you get that job you apply for. Let me know in the comments if you're applying for any jobs, and we can have a chat about that, and that would be fun. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.